Good morning. I am Reverend Michelle Scott Huffman. My pronouns are she, her. I am a middle-aged woman with increasingly pale skin, thanks to the season that we're in, wearing navy pants and a turtleneck and a houndstooth. Is that what we call this jacket? Which is either classic or I don't care, because it's been in my closet for decades. So, yeah. Vintage. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So the introduction to this month's Soul Matters group packet begins with these words. We live in a culture that loves to conquer mysteries. For us modern folks, the unexplainable is simply a lock to be picked, a code to be cracked, a puzzle to be figured out. But what if mystery isn't just something to solve? What if it's also something to be listened to? Imagine with me, if you will, how the rhythm of this month invites us into a different kind of listening. Perhaps a listening that is just a little more open to the unknown, like the anticipation of a gift yet unwrapped, or the anticipation of a first snow. Let's think about snow. If you're comfortable, maybe close your eyes for a moment and envision in your mind a thick, white, heavy snow falling in giant flakes on a moonlit night when everything around you is still. You know, the kind of still and quiet where you can hear the next giant snowflake hit the ground. Think about the way that faraway sounds in that moment of quiet beauty can sound so close and sound as if you've never heard them before. The way everything is amplified because everything is at a hush. And while you are in that quiet, beautiful, open space, here again, this question. What if mystery isn't just something to solve? What if it's also something to be listened to? And then come back into this space as you're ready. As you use, we draw on many religious and non-religious sources to practice meaning making in the world. In fact, it has been said that we proclaim that direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder are a primary source of inspiration. These experiences open our hearts, renew our spirits, and transform our lives. We draw upon and are inspired by sacred, secular, and scientific understandings that help us make meaning and live into our values. So the month of December is a time rich with transcending mystery and wonder. Over the next 3 weeks in this space, we'll get to learn about and engage with celebrations of Hanukkah and solstice and Christmas. 3 very different yet inextricably intertwined holidays, or holy days, if you will, that invite us into mystery in some way. So I wonder what the intersection of all these special celebrations offer for our listening pleasure. Of the mystery of Hanukkah, Michaela Ezra writes, when we share something material, we are left with less of what we started, but currencies of spirit, elements such as light, love, and knowledge defy these physical conditions. They increase as they are shared and become eternal. On Hanukkah, when we use one flame to light another, the glow is not halved, the light is multiplied. Rebecca Parker writes about solstice. For an instant, in the stillness, the chiming of the celestial spheres will be heard as earth hangs poised in the crystalline darkness, and then gracefully tilts. Let there be a season when holiness is heard, and the splendor of living is revealed, stunned to stillness by beauty, We remember who we are and why we are here. And of the mystery of incarnation celebrated by Christians at Christmas, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin writes, by means of all created things, without exception, the divine assails us, permeates us, and molds us. We imagined it as distant and inaccessible when, in fact, we live steeped in its burning layers. When we hear those three quotes from three very different traditions, we are invited to the mystery held within each, yes, but also to listen to what they may say together. Why? Because it turns out we are all here together, carrying parts and pieces of those traditions into this space, building shared wisdom and community from all of our individual sources. From our little free and responsible searches for truth and meaning that bump up against each other when we gather, sometimes creating tension and conflict, but more often creating opportunities for learning and growth in our big collective search for free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And so we bring our individual searches into this place where we still search together for truth and meaning. So at the intersections of these three holidays, we find themes of light and darkness, stillness and beauty, purpose and presence, both divine and human. And rather than deduce answers about what it all means, maybe we can simply ask the questions. Better and better questions. Deeper and more curious questions. Earlier this week on On Being podcast, I heard Krista Tippett say, it's the power of a better question. Answers rise or fall to the questions they meet. And I was captivated by the statement. It became a virtual sticky note on my computer screen and has haunted my thoughts. It's not a new concept for me, as I gave up a desire for certainty quite a while ago in my religious and spiritual experience of life. I decided that sometimes, even though I gave that up, I still find myself foregoing any real appreciation of mystery in favor of, wait for it, efficiency and expediency. This is like true confessions. So I truly appreciate these cyclical invitations to lean in to something different. Maybe our ability to both encounter mystery and engage with it with curiosity instead of conquering it really does lie in our practice of asking questions and then meandering our way from one question to the next. Maybe we don't even need to have an answer to each question along the way. We just let it lead us to the next and the next and the next until there is one that demands our discernment. And so I took these intersecting themes of these holidays in the month of December and asked a series of questions of my own, and maybe some of them will resonate with you. Maybe some of them will stop you in your tracks and demand discernment immediately, or maybe you'll be able to make it through the entire list with me. Maybe you'll jump off from a question that I ask onto questions of your own, which will go on and on and on until you find the one that is calling to you in the moment. But here are my questions. In these days between now and the longest night and a few weeks, how can I lean into the gifts of the darkness? What can it teach me that leaning in now, that learning now will make the coming light-filled days more meaningful, more appreciated, more fulfilling? What messages are whispering to me in the stillness, in those hushed moments where I can hear my own heart beating and my own breath rise and fall? How can stillness be an invitation to listen more closely to myself, my body, my mind, my spirit? And having heard myself and come to live centered in my body once again, or perhaps for the first time, how then do I hear my neighbor and their needs, their hopes, their desires? And is it my communion with self and neighbor that opens my eyes to beauty, or vice versa? Is there some foundational experience of beauty that allows me to finally get in touch with what is true and beautiful within me and around me? Is beauty an experience for just my eyes, or might it be a more fully sensual experience? How do I define beauty? And how has that changed for me throughout my life? And speaking of my life, what am I doing here? How have I understood my purpose in the past, and how do I understand it now? What shapes and colors that understanding? How do the needs of the people in the world around me call out to me? In other words, how is my purpose interconnected to that of the people around me? How then can I be present to those with whom my purpose is intertwined? And how do I recognize and appreciate their presence with me? Is there something that I understand as divine presence, or is human presence enough? If there is a presence of something greater than humanity, is it out there somewhere or right here? Is it within me, around me, above me, about me? None of the above or all of the above? You see, if answers rise and fall to the questions they meet, I feel like we need to ask a lot more questions to beckon the answers that will lead us to fulfillment in this life, to community, to justice and peace. I wonder if our lack of questions, the relatively low ratio of questions to statements in our lives, limits the creativity and power of the answers we will find. And perhaps this practice of rapid fire questions leaves you anxious and wondering, where's the space for the answers? After all, that's what we're here for, right? A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. But wait, that principle sounds different to me after a series of rapid fire questions, because now the emphasis is on the search. It doesn't actually suggest that we do or should ever arrive, but that we just keep searching. And what if this is true, not just of our spiritual pursuits, but of our philosophical and scientific ones as well? Stephen David Ross, distinguished professor of philosophy, interpretation, and culture, wrote in his book, Philosophical Mysteries, "The theory of mystery is not hostile to the immense powers of the natural sciences, since they represent perhaps the most sustained programmatic effort we have undertaken to bring mysteries under our control, in this case by transformation and dispersal. Nevertheless, reason in the shadow of pervasive mysteries is something more than, though not other than, science. For science is but one of the major forms of reason, dependent on one of the major forms of mystery. In short, I speak against a simplistic view of the world and of experience based on a simplistic and narrow conception of understanding and rationality. Mystery calls not for veneration and awe, as the religious words that I shared earlier would suggest, but for a full and complex activity of mind, broaching all established conditions in its pursuit of answers. But the process is infinite, the mysteries unending, our surroundings inexhaustible. Reason is fulfilled as completely in mysteries which persevere throughout our efforts to resolve them, as in mysteries which are resolved and dissipated, passing into new questions to which we must find new answers in an unterminating process of rational interrogation. And so it seems that whether our engagement with mystery is religious, spiritual, philosophical, or scientific, Mystery itself is a catalyst for prolonged, perhaps never-ending engagement. The power of questions becomes a guiding force, propelling us through a labyrinth of self-discovery and interconnectedness. As we reflect on the myriad questions posed about purpose, beauty, divine presence, and the infinite mysteries that surround us, we realize that the essence lies not just in seeking answers, but in the perpetual search itself. The emphasis shifts from a destination to the journey, from resolving mysteries to embracing the unending process of, as Ross says, rational interrogation. This season calls us to open ourselves to curiosity, to engage with mystery not as a problem to be solved, but as a companion to be listened to. Perhaps the true magic lies not in conquering the unknown, but in the dance of questions that lead us from one revelation to the next. As we dwell in the company of these mysteries, we find that our collective search for truth and meaning is a dynamic, evolving story written from the shared language of our individual experiences and diverse perspectives. May we all willingly and joyfully unwrap the gifts of mystery this season. Blessed be, and amen.